Who is in my temple? Who is in my temple? All the doors do open themselves, all the lights do light themselves, all the doors do open themselves, all the lights do light themselves. Darkness like a dark bird flies away, oh flies away. Darkness like a dark bird flies away, oh flies away. Who is in my temple? Who is in my temple? All the doors do open themselves, all the lights do light themselves, all the doors do open themselves, all the lights do light themselves. Darkness like a dark bird flies away, oh flies away. Darkness like a dark bird flies away, oh flies away. Who is in my temple? Who is in my temple? Who is in my temple? Who is in my temple?
Let us start with the prayer. Om Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namaste and good afternoon, everyone. From Homestead Ashram, Gurudev's Ashram at Homestead, I am sitting in the meditation hall. And we are having these sessions, as you know, as part of Gurudev's birthday celebrations. A few days ago, Phil Baba sent me a request that if I could give a talk as a part of this program. And he gave me the options to select one of Paramahamsa Yoganandaji's books to base my talks upon. So I chose one thin book so that I could read myself. And the book's name is The Science of Religion. This is the book, The Science of Religion. It is the first speech Paramahamsa Yoganandaji gave when he came to USA. So it was the speech he delivered at the Boston conference. If you remember, he came here in 1920 in Boston to attend an interfaith conference. And Paramahamsa Yoganandaji delivered this speech with the title, The Science of Religion. It is written, as you can see the title, it is written in quite a scientific manner. Not all his speeches are very analytical and very scientific in the approach. Many are quite devotional. This one in particular, he goes into very analytical mode, probably because of the topic and because of the audience. So when I first saw this book, the title, the thought came to my mind, why the science of religion? Can it not be the religion of science? Is it possible to have a religion of science? The idea seems very weird, simply because we perceive the science on a higher pedestal, and we think that religion has to justify itself by the science, instead of science justifying itself by the religion. So we'll see that idea, that what does it mean if we have to say religion of science. As many of you might be knowing, that science and religion a few hundred years ago, they were considered opposite to each other, so to speak. While the science is the study of natural phenomena by observation, experimentation, and analysis, and then again going into the cycle again, observation, experimentation, analysis. It does not take anything for granted as a belief. On the other hand, religion is considered or generally assumed to be just a matter of belief, just a few statements of belief, thereby giving rise to many religions having their own belief systems. Is it possible to have a religion where it could be understood in the similar manner, the way we understand science, whereby you observe, experiment, and analyze? If it were so, then that would be something like a science of religion. And in this book, Paramahamsa Yoganandaji has attempted that aspect. Just a couple of things I want to mention before we further progress on this topic. As a part of the celebration of Gurudev's birthday seminar, we are posting one video of Gurudev every day on the channel Vignettes from the Masters. You can also find the link for these videos in the online programs on our Kriya.org website. And another thing is, I want to keep the last 10 minutes of this talk for taking the questions. So you can keep sending your questions as I progress in the talk. And in the last 10 minutes, I'll take whatever number of questions it is possible for me to address those questions. So you can use the chat window to keep sending your questions. So coming to the religion, can religion have a science? Can religion be viewed, observed, experimented, and analyzed in the same scientific manner as any scientific phenomena we do? So one thing which is very important there, just like in science, you first define the things. Define very precisely. Like if you know in physics, we use many terms which are also used in common parlance, like force, energy, work. But when you are studying physics, those terms are very precisely defined, so that there is no confusion. When somebody is using that word, There is no confusion. What does that mean? On the other hand, we see in religion, people ask many a times, do you believe in God? And some religions, based upon that statement alone, they divide people into believers and non-believers. Very rarely do we even inquire into this topic. What is God? Can we define this term, God? So that when somebody says, do you believe in God? That person understands exactly what does it mean. And this, I haven't seen this attempt in many spiritual books very explicitly. In some ways they have tried to, but explicit analysis of this aspect is generally not found. What is God? Can we define this word? Before we even define this word God, there is also a question of why do I need to know about God? What is in it for me? We have to understand that a human being, as a human being, everything has to be looked at from my point of view. That's how the world is. I look at this whole world from my point of view. A very simple example I'll give you. How do I define the directions? East, west, north, south. From the place where I am, it is my east, it is west, it is north, it is south. Otherwise, if you look at absolutely, there is no concept of east, west, north, and south. When I say this is east, I am saying this thing from the perspective of myself. So this thing is so deep-rooted in us that everything has to be taken from my point of view, including God and religion. So what is it? Why do I need to know God? Why do I have to bother about what is God, whether I need to believe in God or not? So the question is, will be then put upon, what do I want? What is it that I really want in life? And if you analyze this question a little bit deeply, you will know that what I want is happiness. All my actions, knowingly or unknowingly, they are governed by this desire for happiness. I may have 1,001 desires, different kind of desires, seemingly disconnected to each other. Different people have very different desires. And yet, all these desires stem from one single desire for happiness. Whether a person becomes a monk wearing this dress, or a person decides to choose the life of a householder, the actions seemingly are quite opposite. Yet the desire for both these actions is common, desire for happiness. One perceives that he will be happier if he becomes a monk. Another person perceives that he will be happier if he gets into a householder life. One person can eat a certain type of food. Another person may just hate it and go for a completely different kind of food. Again, seemingly very opposite actions. Desire is the same. One person may go after money for a very good job. One person may just leave the job, a very good job. Both these actions are prompted by the same desire for happiness. So, you cannot really find an exception to this rule, that all my actions, whether they are very small actions or very big actions, even this simple action, for example, I am talking here and you are listening to me. In some ways, if you analyze, you will find that this action on my part is prompted by the desire for happiness, same way on your part also. When I say desire for happiness, it includes desire for removal of pain also. So in Sanskrit it is said, dukkhasya nivrittihi paramananda praptihi. Cessation from all the sorrows, getting rid of all the sorrows and attaining the highest happiness. That is the single most desire which prompts all sort of actions in human beings. Now, what kind of happiness do I want? One thing is certain, that I'm looking for happiness. Now, what kind of happiness do I want? Do I want to be happy today and not happy tomorrow? If I give this kind of options, person will say, Swamiji, certainly I want to be happy all the time, but if that is the only choice I have, I may accept it. But I want to be happy irrespective of the time, whether it is morning, noon, night, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, next year, or 50 years from now, I want to be happy. Nobody will have a plan for that. It's okay to be unhappy. Nobody would have that desire. We may accept it as a compromise, as a collateral damage, as they say. But my desire for happiness is I should be happy all the time. That means my desire, my happiness should not be limited by time. Similarly, do I want to be happy when I'm in the ashram, or I want to be unhappy when I'm outside the ashram? No. I want to be happy in all the places. Whether I'm in America, whether I'm in India, whether I'm inside the ashram, whether I'm outside the ashram, whether I'm at somebody's home. People may say that I feel unhappy if I go to somebody's home. Yet my desire is that I should not be unhappy. My happiness should not be limited by the place. And this is a very important thing. I may avoid certain places because that makes me unhappy. But what is my desire? My desire is that it should not be limited by any place. Similarly, if an option is given, do I want to be happy in the company of this person A, and I want to be unhappy in the company of person B? I will say I'm not happy in the company of person B. That's possible, but my desire is to be actually not have my happiness being limited by which person I'm in contact with. My desire is that my happiness should not be limited by the person. Whether it is possible that somebody may say, Swamiji, I am extremely unhappy when my mother-in-law comes to stay with me. But my desire for happiness, if you look at, it should not be limited. It should not be constrained by the person. Similarly, any situation. My desire for happiness should not be limited by any situation I am in. Whether in childhood, if you look at in terms of the age of the body, youth, middle age, old age, my desire is to be happy in whatever stage I am in. So whatever situation I am in, I want to be happy. Even if I may like health of the body a lot, that my body should be healthy. Yet, if the body does become unhealthy, I still want to be happy. My desire for happiness should not be limited by the condition of the body, or for that matter, even by the condition of the mind. This desire for happiness, this limitless happiness, is that it should not be limited by time, it should not be limited by place, it should not be limited by any persons, it should not be limited by any particular situation. I want to have this limitless desire. Limitless happiness. Sorry, desire for limitless happiness. This is what I really want. And this desire is universal. This desire for limitless happiness is universal. You will not find any exception to it. A person, a very high profile executive or owner of a company in New York, will have the same desire as a person, a tribal person somewhere in, let's say, so-called very backward areas of Africa or other places. They will have, as far as this desire is concerned, desire for limitless happiness, it will be common. A person who happened 10,000 years ago versus a person today, would this desire change? No. The person 10,000 years ago had the same desire for this limitless happiness. A person today has the same desire. And a person 10,000 years from now, hope humanity survives, will have the same desire. There would be no exception to it. So the desire is very universal. And this desire is not taught to me, unlike some other desires. So desire to watch a particular TV show, that is a created desire. That desire I only get because I'm exposed to certain environment. That desire, any created desire cannot be universal because different persons are exposed to different environment. But this desire for limitless happiness, it is not a created desire. It is a desire I am born with. Or if you go from a spiritual perspective, it is the desire because of which I am born. So it is just a part and parcel of my being, this desire for limitless happiness. In as much as that it's not a learned desire, it's not a created desire, it's a natural and universal in nature. It is also something that I cannot give up. It is possible to give up a desire for a food if I can get a better food, or if somebody tells me that this food is going to be harmful for you, I may be able to give up the desire for that particular food. But this desire for limitless happiness cannot be given up, no matter how much effort can one make in order to give up any desire. In fact, giving up of all the desires is for the sake of this desire alone. People who want to reduce their desires is for the sake of this desire alone, that they want to attain limitless happiness. So the desire for limitless happiness itself cannot be given up, nor can it be compromised to a lower desire. As I said, we can agree as a matter of impracticality that it seems impractical that I should be happy all the time, so I may accept that I will not be happy all the time. But my desire is nevertheless always that I should be happy all the time. Now there is a law, natural law, regarding the desires, that if a desire is universal, and it cannot be given up. It must find its fulfillment. For example, the desire for the body regarding the food, regarding the nutrition. That is a natural desire of the body, which we can call need. And if that need is not fulfilled, the body will be a dead body. Body will not survive. That means this desire has to be fulfilled. Desire for water, desire for breathing air. These are all needs, so to speak, and they have to be fulfilled. That natural law just ensures, otherwise the organism will not survive. This is a very amazing thing, that if I look at this desire for limitless happiness, it just seems like an impossible desire. It seems like an impractical desire. Yet I am finding that I cannot give up this desire. It's a universal in nature. And if as per natural law it must find its fulfillment, how does that work out? Because it doesn't seem like it makes sense. No, in my life I don't seem like that. How can I ever have any hope of fulfillment of this limitless happiness? So we'll see what does that mean, how to have its fulfillment. So if you look at in one way, this limitless happiness, which I really want, that is the definition, if I could say, of God, of the word God. And the religion is a methodology, a systematic set of instructions to attain this particular goal of limitless happiness, or I can say God realization. Once this part of definition of God is understood, there would be no confusion, no conflicts between the religions. There will be no dogmas. The methods could be different, yet everybody would have the understanding that those methods can suit certain people, and therefore certain different people can practice different religion. But it will not be like my God versus your God. Let us fight it out. Who is more powerful? Whose God is more powerful? If this particular aspect alone is understood, whatever wars we have had because of religions will have no place. On the other hand, if you look at a particular prophet, however great that may be, cannot have an universal acceptance. For example, Krishna, if you look at Krishna or Jesus or Muhammad, if you try to say that everybody must accept Krishna alone to be supreme Godhead, how will it be possible for Christians, Muslims, and so many people who may not even have heard of name Krishna? Not even for that matter all the Hindus to accept Krishna as supreme God. Similarly, if you say Jesus, how is it possible that Muslims or Hindus or people of other religion other than Christianity would find acceptance to that fact? Similarly, in relation to any great prophet of mankind, they all are great, there is no question about it. But universal acceptance cannot be. But if we have this definition of limitless happiness, and this limitless happiness in this book, Paramahamsa Yoganandaji has defined as bliss. So in this sense, the terms bliss and God, they are synonyms. So in that case, it becomes very clear to me that why do I need God? Because I already need God actually. It's not a question of a created desire that I need to believe in God. Everybody already believes in God. It's not knowing what God is. If I have some strange idea about God, somebody sitting above the clouds, guiding all my actions, then yes, there would be difference of opinions naturally, because it's just a matter of belief. People would say, we have gone beyond the clouds, even on the moon, there is no sign of God to be found. Of course. But if you consider God as something which is my practical need, absolute necessity, I cannot give up, then there would be no confusion, no quarrels about whether one believes in God or not. And this particular aspect I found pretty amazing, that Paramahamsa Yoganandaji gave this talk as his first talk in USA, in such a, and that was in 1920. So it must have made quite impression on the people at that time. People at that time were not, I think, as I studied, used to take the definition of God in such a scientific and matter-of-fact manner. And Yoganandaji also mentions that normally in my life, I may say I believe in God, but that becomes more of a hollow statement. God becomes a part-time thing. Maybe when I'm sitting for puja, when I'm going to church, when I'm going to temple, I'm sitting for meditation, I'm thinking of God. All other times, God recedes away from my memory. But if you take this definition of bliss as God, then you will see it is all the time. There is absolutely no time when I do not have this desire for limitless happiness. It is just that I am not very consciously aware of it. And many people say that God guides all our actions. And many people disagree with that. Naturally, it becomes a matter of belief. But if you understand this aspect of God as bliss, then it's no longer a matter of belief. This is a very practical thing to see, that God, in the form of bliss, in the form of the desire for limitless happiness, does indeed guide all my action. All my actions are prompted by this single most desire for limitless happiness. So this statement can be understood from that perspective in the light of this definition. Now, another thing about this aspect of happiness, that if I give an offer to somebody that, okay, you want limitless happiness, that is fine. I'll just put you to the death and you will go to heaven and you will enjoy limitless happiness. There will be never any sorrow. Nobody takes that offer. Nobody would be willing to take that offer. The reason I'm saying nobody would be willing to take that offer, because that offer is actually open to everybody to die anytime, yet people are living. Even somebody who commits suicide is not because of he is so enchanted by the prospect of limitless happiness, but because the sorrow becomes unbearable for that person. So one thing, I want to exist and enjoy this happiness. I want to experience this happiness, but I want to exist. I don't want to be in the state of happiness without existence. So existence is very much a requirement. Okay, fine, you want to exist, you want to be happy, I'll give you another option. I'll give you an injection, we'll put you in coma. You will not know any sorrow. And you will be always happy. Again, nobody would be willing to take up that offer. I want to be aware that I am happy. So I want to exist, I want to be happy, and I want to be aware that I am happy. And this is what is known as Satchidananda in Sanskrit. Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat is existence, Chit is consciousness, and bliss is Ananda, Satchidananda. existence, consciousness, and bliss absolute. So these three things, as you can see, essentially is one, because without existence, the consciousness cannot be. Without consciousness, existence cannot be, and I cannot experience the happiness without having the existence and consciousness. So Satchidananda. Now, one thing, if you look at this desire for limitless happiness, this is universal, this is natural, cannot be given up, and yet it governs all my actions, every single action. And yet, if I look at my actions, all my actions, no matter how great, even if I become wildly successful in all my pursuits, I do not see any hope of attaining this limitless happiness. So no matter what actions are you performing, whatever your greatest of the desires are, greatest of endeavors or projects are, you could be absolutely successful in any of those. And yet you will see that this prospect of limitless happiness is not attained by any of those actions, by any of those achievements. So I may achieve whatever is possible for me to achieve, yet it is not possible to attain the limitless happiness by any achievement I can think of, let alone being able to achieve. This is a great contradiction, that all my actions are prompted by this desire for limitless happiness. And yet, none of the actions, none of the achievements as a result of the action would give me this limitless happiness. I cannot imagine anything, any object in the world that I can attain and it will help me attaining this limitless happiness. And yet, I am running after all these objectives, attainments, that somehow I want to get this, I want to get this, I want to get this. This great contradiction arises because somehow I have compromised that even though my desire is for limitless happiness, it is somehow not possible. So let me just settle down for whatever little happiness I can get. And that when I settle down for this little happiness, that in turn brings miseries, because that creates the desire for a particular object or a particular situation or a particular company of a particular person. And more I have these desires, more difficult it becomes to fulfill those desires, because more desires are there, more difficult it would be to fulfill, and unfulfilled desire would cause the pain. So religion is essentially a methodology which guides us to keep this goal, to understand this goal, and also to help attain this goal. What is that methodology? And just like this desire is universal for limitless happiness, the methodology, fundamentals of methodology have to be universal. Even though different people finally, as a packaged thing, as a different tradition, as different modes of worships, they may seem very different. Yet the fundamentals must remain universally applicable. So I'll tell you, there are 3 types of happiness defined in Gita. And this is not the bliss, but the happiness. Sukham, Trividham. 3 types of happiness is defined in 18th chapter of Gita, from the verse 1836 to 1839. And these three types of happiness Lord describes as Sattvic happiness, Rajasic happiness, and Tamasic happiness. Sattvic happiness he describes as something which may be painful in the starting, but is actually having nectar-like results in the end. That is Sattvic happiness. Rajasic happiness is quite the opposite. Something which could be very enjoyable in the beginning, but resulting into the pain in the end. That is Rajasic happiness. Tamasic happiness is happiness which one attains not so much by enjoying the sense objects, but just by deluding oneself, going into a stupor, going into sleep, going into procrastination. We procrastinate, right? Many times. And that is also because somehow it gives me happiness. That's why I procrastinate. So that is a kind of happiness Lord describes as tamasic happiness. Rajasic happiness, where something which gives me the joy in the beginning, at the time of enjoying. So most of the sense objects, all the sense objects fall in this category of Rajasic happiness. That I go after the sense object. I like a sense object. I like very spicy food. I go after the spicy food. I enjoy it. And later on, maybe a few years down the line, my body may fall sick and I would have a lot of pain for that small share of enjoyment. And like this, there are many such examples. People who may be diabetic, they may know that eating sugar is not good, yet they find it very difficult to resist eating chocolate because it gives them joy, it gives them that happiness. You remember, in essence, all our actions are prompted by this desire for happiness. But because somehow instead of keeping this desire for limitless happiness, I settle for some sort of happiness, and it gives rise to pain. Then Sattvic happiness, Lord is saying something which may be inconvenient, may not be very comfortable in the beginning, yet it has its own dividend towards the end. That is Sattvic happiness. So something like somebody decides that I'll get up early in the morning, sit for meditation. Maybe the mind will say, okay, just press the snooze button. What's the need for getting up so early in the morning? It's okay if I get up after 15 minutes. But if I resist that feeling and I make it a habit of getting up early, sitting for meditation, then that particular practice will bring a lot of joy in itself, as well as it will eventually help me to attain this limitless happiness. So one methodology is to reduce my dependence on the happiness which is coming from its tamasic and rajasic nature, and more cultivate sattvic happiness. So that is one way. More sattvic happiness one cultivates, it eventually leads one to that limitless happiness, the goal of bliss. Then there are certain other methodologies of attaining this limitless happiness. We do not have a lot of time to go into these methodologies, but they are known: Jnana Yoga, path of knowledge; Bhakti Yoga, path of devotion; Karma Yoga, path of action; Raja Yoga, path of will. Generally, there are, of course, different ways to classify these things. But in one way, you can understand that these are the different methodologies. Essentially, it is said that the knowledge alone is the bliss, the jnana. But in order to attain that jnana, the heart has to be purified, or the mind has to be purified. And then there are different means of spiritual practices which are by these methods, which help one to attain that state. And as we are practicing Kriya Yoga, it is actually a combination of all these methodologies, and that's why it's a very integrated approach. Patanjali says, most of you might know, Tapaha, Swadhyaya, Iswara, Pranidhanani, Kriya, Yogaha. So Tapa here relates to Karma Yoga aspect, Swadhyaya relates to Jnana Yoga aspect, Ishwar Pranidhana relates to Bhakti Yoga aspect. So these are the different methodologies of attaining this goal. Now I was telling you about this religion of science. Is it possible to have a religion of science instead of just science of religion? But once you understand this aspect, that what is God, what is religion, then yes, there could be a religion of science. Not in the sense that there would be a Christian science or Hindu science or Muslim science, that of course is absurd. But a science, the application, particular aspect of application of science, that I should only allow those applications which contribute to this goal of attaining limitless happiness by increasing the Sattvic happiness, not Rajasic happiness or Tamasic happiness. And then you will see that most of the science which we have today is actually not religious in that sense, because it does not give rise to the Sattvic happiness aspect of the people. It rather promotes Rajasic happiness or Tamasic happiness. And there is a beautiful story I always like. It's from the Ramayana period. So those of you who know story of Ramayana, Lord Rama goes to forest on the orders of his father. And on the way, he stays in the hermitage of a rishi called Bharadwaja. He stays there one night and he asked Bharadwaja, where should I spend my 14 years? Because his order was to stay for 14 years in exile. And Rishi Bharadwaja suggests a place for him. And later on, Rama's younger brother Bharata, he wants to bring Rama back. And he goes along with the whole army of his kingdom to bring Rama back. And Bharata also stays in the ashram of this Rishi Bharadwaja. Bharadwaja, when he sees, it's just a small hermitage, but he offers to entertain all the guests of Bharata's army. Now, Bharata was quite surprised that how come Rishi is offering, because it's such a simple hermitage, they may be able to make 1 or 2 extra meals, but how for thousands and millions of people? And Bharadwaja offered both stay as well as the food, basically the full hospitality. And when Bharata raised his concern and said, it's not needed, your words are enough, Bharadwaja insisted, no, it's my desire. And Bharata said, okay. And it is said that the Bharadwaja, he produced all these wonderful things, all these heavenly enjoyments, accommodations, food, everything, servants, you name it. Those people had never enjoyed, never experienced such kind of heavenly enjoyments in their life. To the extent that it's written in Ramayana that they forgot their goal of, many of them forgot to bring the goal of that why they are going to bring Rama back. Just like we forget the goal of getting Rama in our life by getting distracted by the enjoyments. Except Bharata. Bharata, it is said that he remained completely unaffected. But after all this was done, they stayed there for one night. Many of the rishis, they saw what Bharadwaja has done. And they saw that he had some yogic powers because of which he did all these miraculous things. At the same time, he was a great scientist, natural scientist. And he knew a lot of scientific methods. And because of those methods also, he was able to produce a lot of things. So they had a conference. They went to Bharadwaja and said, look, your yogic powers, they are a result of your sadhana, cannot be given to others. They have to do their own sadhana. But your scientific achievements, the invention, they could easily be shared with other people to make them comfortable. Would it not be good if you do that? And Bharadwaj said, maybe what you are proposing, that's a good idea. Let us discuss it. Let us discuss the pros and cons. So all these great rishis who had come, they had a meeting. And they discussed what are the pros and cons of allowing this kind of inventions to go into public. And one of the plus points, they find that it will make the life very convenient for people. So for example, if the weather is not good, I can turn on air conditioning. The distance of 100 miles, which might take me to travel on foot, travel 3 days, it may take 3 days for me to travel on foot, or more, I may cover it in a matter of couple of hours by an automobile. So overall, the life would be convenient, time will be saved, people would be comfortable. So that is definitely a plus point. Then what are the negative points? Negative points. So first point, they arrived at negative point, which was very straightforward to arrive at, in my opinion, that it will weaken the power of the mind, body, and senses. People would become weaker in their mind, body, and senses. And that is something we can easily see happening. Another negative point they arrived at, that it will make human relationships very selfish in nature. People will always look at what is in it for me from this person. And father may not be able to trust the son, or son may not be able to trust father. Husband and wife may not be able to trust each other completely. The human relationships will become completely distorted. They will become very money-oriented, very selfish, goal-oriented. And based upon this analysis, they decided not to make those scientific inventions public. That means let the science be controlled by the religion, aspects of religion, rather than other way around. So I find this incident, this story very amazing, that even at that time, the rishis had this insight. We are talking of thousands of years ago, when there were no scientific inventions in the public sphere, that they could analyze these things and get to these conclusions, and decided not to make these scientific inventions public. And I want to conclude before taking your questions, that Paramahamsa Yoganandaji has said in this book regarding attaining this goal of limitless happiness. It is never too late. And he quotes a verse in Bible, Matthew 7:7. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. So with this, I'll take the questions. And I'll see how many questions can we have the opportunity to answer. So there is a question. We are discussing about the methodologies of attaining the goal. But if we surrender to God and Gurus completely, won't that take care of everything else? Yes, it would. What stops you from surrendering? So there must be something. Otherwise, this question will not arise in your mind. There must be something which must be stopping you from making this complete surrender to God and Gurus. And this is the reason why methodologies are in place. There is a question. Doesn't this understanding of limitless happiness help us in developing vairagya? So vairagya is the detachment. And yes, that is true. understanding of this limitless happiness helped me in developing vairagya, simply because I understand that I do not want to go for these objects which will give me only the limited happiness and eventually pain. Once that understanding is there, it will naturally give rise to vairagya or the detachment. If there's a question, if everything that is God's can be found in our breath and thought, then why do we need to do some more complicated rituals in different religions? So different people have different states of mind. Not everybody can comprehend the same practice in the same manner, and that's the reason for rise of all these different practices. But once I understand that somehow this practice helps me to attain, to move towards this goal, then it's okay. Then there will be no conflict or confusion, because it is said that goal is one, paths are many, only in that regard. So if that path of not performing rituals and just understanding this is good for you, that is congratulations, good enough. But for some people, doing the rituals help, and for them that is a perfectly valid path. Question: how does one do daily work without giving into needless desires? As we know, I'll just give you a very simple answer and very practical answer. Gurudev again and again said that keep the attention in the fontanel. In other words, always be aware of the goal, and with the help of the breath. So if I develop the breath consciousness, if I develop that attention in the fontanel and therefore attention to the goal, I will not be distracted by needless desires. So these are some of the questions which I found, which I got from you, and I got to. Okay, there is a question. Is breathing a function of desire or an autonomous function of the body? Is absence of sorrow in coma state a state of happiness or a state of unawareness? State of coma is naturally a state of unawareness. That is very clear. Is breathing a function of desire or an autonomous function of the body? You tell me, you are breathing. Is it a matter of desire? Is it an autonomous function? It's not a matter of desire, thank goodness. Otherwise, we would forget to breathe sometimes. So with this, we'll close our topic with the prayer that all of us be aware of this goal of limitless happiness, goal of bliss, goal of God realization in our lives through all our actions. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhave. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, everybody.